Welcome to One Version of the Truth, the podcast where we explore how leaders create measurable business value from data. Every episode features candid conversations with executives, entrepreneurs, and practitioners who've spent their careers turning information into action, separating hype from what actually works. Today I'm joined by Thapa, founder and CEO of Sunny Data. Kai has spent more than 2 decades in the data industry building software, leading enterprise technology sales, advising Fortune 500 organizations, and now scaling one of the fastest growing consulting firms in the Databricks ecosystem. In just over 2 years, Sunny Data has grown into a global organization with nearly 200 employees, helping enterprises modernize their data platforms and accelerate AI initiatives. With AI dominating every boardroom conversation, it's easy to believe that success comes from choosing the right model or the latest technology. But after 20 years of working with hundreds of customers, Kai's perspective is surprisingly different. The technology is often the easy part. The organizations that create lasting value aren't the ones obsessed with semantic layers, data quality scores, or the newest AI buzzwords. They're the ones who deeply understand the business problem they're trying to solve, build trust across the organization, and iterate quickly towards measurable outcomes. In this conversation, we discuss what Kai has learned from his 2 decades of customer engagements, why so many data initiatives still miss the mark, how AI is changing the pace, but not the fundamentals of enterprise transformation, and what it takes to build nearly a $10 million business in the middle of an AI boom in less than 3 years. This is my conversation with Kai Thapa. We're here with Kai Thapa. Kai, I don't even remember. How did we first meet? I've known you for so long now.
Yeah, I think going back to when I was living in New York City, all goes back to data and a sales cycle. I think you were my customer back to, what was it selling? Snap Logic, I think, as the
Okay.
ETL tool back in 2014. And we had actually a mutual friend in common. So we've always stayed close, conversing. And, I used to talk to a lot about your entrepreneurial journey, which finally gave me the excitement to finally take the jump off the cliff and start my own journey, right? 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was so cool when I first started in the data space. I didn't know anything about technology, and so I just put my tentacles out to speak to people, and I learned quickly to bypass the AE or account executive to get to the sales engineer, because you could learn so much from the sales engineer. And I think that's why when we first started working, I don't think I could have even spelled ETL. And then by the end of it, I was a judo ninja getting through some of this stuff, because it's kind of some of the technology, there's a little bit of a learning curve to it, and then people throw these things around like they mean something. It's an acronym that literally is extract, transform, load. I think it's ELT now or something like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it's funny that how it kind of goes along the way. I'm curious. I mean, you started as a sales engineer. You're crazy technical. You can build software. You can implement probably some of the most complex data platforms on the planet. You were doing, MPP before it was cool. Now you're in with Databricks. Tell me this, you started as an engineer, so you're a technical guy, but now you're a CEO and you've built a rapidly growing business, and I have enormous respect for the success you've had in such a short period of time. But tell me this, how did your engineering experience shape how you're thinking about business as an entrepreneur
Yeah.
today?
I think the root of it goes to 2 things, right? One, being an engineer, to me, it's all about focusing on the problem, right? My problems as an entrepreneur growing scale, really focusing on what is the core problem that we're trying to solve for the customer, right? And 2, I think early stage, when I was even the first job I was at, right, being an engineer, being very close. It was a startup, so I got to experience the sales cycle, right, being the account management, being very close to the customer. What do they really care about? You will make mistakes along the way, whether it's software, services, right? Really owning the problem, communicating the problem to the customer, and being transparent and coming through, right? You may not always be able to solve it, but putting in the effort, coming through on your commitments. That has really helped me today, to start the business and the growth. But really, at the end of the day, I think, to me, you have to really understand the problem, right, that you're trying to solve, whether it's a business process problem. I think in technology, yes, I have so lots of technologies. We get enamored with the technology versus, really the core, the crux of what we're trying to solve for the customers is the problem, right?
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, it just comes down to clarity and trust, right? It is that if people don't trust you, they're not going to work with you. And if they don't understand you, they're not going to work with you. And if you can't deliver on what they say, they're not going to want to work with you anymore. And that's true across so many different things here.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say I think I missed is, and I've pivoted my career, right? I was an engineer at a startup, building out a product
Yeah.
engineering team, and I'm so thankful. I'll give a plug. The first startup I was at, they've been good friends and mentor, right? They allowed me to kind of be close to the customers, right? Pat Ballum and John Prangy are their names. I'm so glad for that early experience I got that a lot of engineers may not get to, right? Being close to the customer, being able to experience that, learn from those hard lessons. Also, I got my MBA just like you. I was like, I'm going to be a management consultant, right? I did that for a few years, and it was a lot of assessment, strategy, decks, right? You would do readouts and plan, which today, right? Claude and these Gemini can do it in like 5-10 minutes, and that wasn't for me. And that's when I got into enterprise software sales, loved it, and that really I think prepared me, with the right team, the right founding partners to start the journey being an entrepreneur.
That's really cool. So tell me that, I mean, we kind of talked about trust, clarity, being clear on what the problem is. What happens when a SE or a consultant doesn't clearly diagnose the problem? What does execution look like?
Yeah, I think, whether it's, you're trying to, on the sales side, right, we're trying to sell a solution or you're trying to deliver a solution. When you get too fixated on other things beyond the core of the problems, right, it's easy to get distracted with all the bells and whistles, right? In the data space, you start talking about, buzzwords around data quality, semantic layer, governance, right? But you're not hitting the mark on the core problem that you're trying to solve for the customer, the end business user. Right. Sometimes, as data folks, technologists, you're like 2 or 3 steps far removed from the actual problem. Right. And that's, I think, when you miss the mark, you're focused on too many other things that are not related to how this solution, right, does it really solve the problem? Does it make the life of the business user better? Right. Does it improve? Does it reduce hours? Does it reduce costs? Right. Does it, make a customer happy? I think everybody needs to be fixated on that, number one, right? Versus just like, hey, we're going to improve data quality, or like, oh my God, the semantic layer, we get too wrapped up around the axle on that.
Well, I think you kind of call that out pretty clearly is that people get hung up on data quality versus value identification and hung up on the semantic layer when no one really cares, right? Tell me this. You've been doing this for 20 years. People are still talking about data quality and semantic layer as the hill to die on. Yet at the same time, we've seen the ascent and possible decline of the CDO, AI removing the relevance of the data leader as a translator to the business. Yet people are willing to die for these principles. I think they're willing to lose their
Yeah,
jobs over data quality
I
and
know.
semantic layer. I mean, how many dozens of data leaders have you worked with that even if you hit them over the face with a 2x4, they're still going to stand by those principles and punt. Well, the business doesn't understand value, right? They don't understand. I mean, how often have you seen that cycle? And do you have an example you can share with
Yeah,
either a former customer or
100%. I mean, this still happens to this day, but to your point, I think, right, the longevity of the CDO, and I think today, like, look, I think executives, we talk about data literacy, right? Data literacy has just gone up, whether good or bad, right, due to AI, right? Executives can get a lot done with their smartphones today, right? They expect the same thing out of their enterprise technology. So gone are the days of a 3-year data maturation modernization roadmap, right? If you go to your executives with a 2-year roadmap, it is going to get shut down immediately, right? So with AI, executives expect fast ROI, iterations, faster time to value, right, than ever before, right? 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Yeah, there are lots of examples still, in my business where, right, people are too hung up on, look, there's a time and place for governance, from a risk audit, all that perspective, absolutely. But I think getting too hung up on sort of, theoretical exercises around semantic layer and this and that, those things still have a time and place, but I think business leaders, data leaders, need to be thinking about execution, getting a use case executed and delivering, real impactful use cases versus just a theoretical exercise, right? And it still happens to this day. In fact, I think we've got the landscape has sort of evolved, right? Now the same group of, cohorts of architects and leaders are, MPP and, right, all the agentic new buzzwords that are being thrown out, which at the end of the day, I hope, right, most leaders are trying to solve for real business use cases with these technologies versus just, right, theoretical exercises around the latest buzzwords that are getting picked up in the industry.
One of the things I see working with my clients and it's not all of them, but I could pay them $1,000 to go talk to the business and they wouldn't take me up on it. They shy away from it. They'd rather talk about the data warehouse and why, the technology is inefficient, not optimized. And meanwhile, they have 12 people using architecture that's costing the company $1 million a year. And then the remaining 200 people using data in the business are going to reports that were in place in the 1990s, right? Because it's reliable, fast, and consistent. It's tough to influence them to be able to kind of look past their comfort zone. How did you get past that? I mean, you're super technical. I'm super technical. Like, how did you get over needing to control the technology, letting go of that, and focusing more on the problem than the
Yeah.
solution?
No, it's a great question. I go back to my business consulting days where, I think you have to think about the business process, right? Use any framework. I've used something like SciPoc in the past. It's basically grounding yourself in a framework on in a day in the life of a business user, right? A claims processor, a clinician, a service person picking up the phone. What does their day look like, right? How do they intake work? What does that work look like? Where are the bottlenecks? And think about that process, business process. What are the bottlenecks and what are you trying to solve for? If you think of these use cases from a business process flow perspective and which problem am I trying to tackle, then we can layer in the technology, right? It could be a data technology, it could be a process technology. They're all kind of blending now. So I think I encourage all my team and the engagements that we have with our customers to think of it that way from a business process perspective, right? Then you can, instead of leading with technology all the time, right?
Yeah, but why do you even care, Kai? Like, I think that for you to want to understand the process, are you curious, or do you want to help? Or are you seeking impact? Like, why do you even care to have that conversation? Like, what's your motivator?
Yeah, I think all those things. Number one, you want to have impact, right? At the end of the engagement, selfishly for my company and my brand, it's like, did we make the impact we said we were going to? Now, is it always successful? No, right? You still have projects where we're like, hey, we're doing a migration. We're trying to get this out there for X, Y, and Z reasons, right? The ROI is, technical operations improvement, right? Technical, savings from the dollars and cents from moving to the cloud. There are those use cases. Absolutely. I get it. But I think you have to at least push the customer to think that way, right? If you're a data technologist in a large enterprise, many layers from the actual business users, right? Like, have we thought about it? What is the impact? The why, right? Like, why are we doing this? What is the impact? You have to push, your team, the customer teams towards that direction, because at some point questions are going to ask, right? We did all this, and what is the impact? What is the benefit?
Yeah, for me, I always felt like when I'm looking at these business users who are already talented and they're pretty smart with data, especially the ones who are involved, it's like, can I make someone who's already really good at their job 1% better? Because that 1% compounds to their team, right? I think there's this mindset like that the business is illiterate, so I need to educate them on the semantic layer and how to profile. They don't give a shit. Like it really comes down to,
Yeah.
hey, how can you help me be more efficient and productive in my role? How do you enable them? And I think you need that like intrinsic motivation, because I think it's easy to say business value, but I think an uglier color that comes out is where I've seen data leaders literally go to the business, explain to them with data why they're wrong with their process, how to do their job better.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's just like, oh my God, like, data isn't the answer all the time. I really stress the importance of relationships and trying to build trust and help identify that problem. But
Or the other thing is, yes, you may get like a 2% improvement, but it just isn't in their priority, right? It's, business has, 5 or 10 priorities for the next quarter, the next year, or this year, and it just isn't in the priority list. So they've got bigger fish to fry. Then it's a business decision, right? But at least you've laid out the business process. There's awareness of what the bottleneck. Those exercises are amazing if you can kind of put it in a lot of these business processes, business departments probably haven't gone through a process exercise like that, right? What does your process look like? Maybe they did one, 5 years ago and it's changed over time, right? So that process in itself elicits a lot of bottlenecks in areas of opportunities for the business.
I think the best job opportunity for technological savvy executives looking for these like change management jobs, whether it's like head of data or AI, is looking at the process and building bespoke enterprise analytics solutions using things like Claude Code or whatever to build analytic and AI capabilities for their organizations in-house. And I'm not talking about, hey, let's replace our ERP system with
Right.
our homegrown solution. It's no, hey, we've got this quality monitoring process that's 25 Excel spreadsheets, and it's like the stuff that RPA couldn't get at, that people wanted, and data warehousing couldn't get at. But like, to your point, like getting into the process and building bespoke solutions, I don't think there's a better opportunity than now for a data person to jump in there, roll up their sleeves, and start building enterprise products with embedded AI and
Yeah.
analytics versus just socializing dashboards. I think people have moved beyond dashboards. People need
100%.
automation. Yeah.
And I would say this, Taylor, right? Like the macroeconomic conditions, what AI has done, the world of sort of data and apps are collapsing, right? From just operational model, capabilities. And I think where the consulting services industry is also headed with like forward deployed strategies, everybody's trying to take a page off Palantir, right? Which is really, understanding the business process and mapping engineers to be able to kind of iterate and solve for those problems very quickly, right? Like, engineering is not the bottleneck, right? Your coding agents can do that. The bottleneck shifts to what is a product backlog? What is a priority? What can we solve for? And iterate really fast, right? Nobody's saying, hey, I need a data engineer. I need an app engineer. You know what? Everybody can do everything, right? It's just, you need an engineer that really understands the business. Let's embed them in the business and let's solve for that faster, right? So I think it's the way we work and deliver these capabilities, adjusting to where the industry is headed, where the demand is, right? Because engineering is not the bottleneck anymore.
I think it's so cool. I honestly, I was probably like, we've been around long enough to see a couple hype cycles. I was super excited about parallel processing for analytics
I
because
remember
it
that.
used to be
Yeah.
super slow. I was super excited about cloud, right? Because it democratized how people can get access to information and build apps. And now what LLMs are doing, especially around coding, is absolutely incredible. And that's probably the third coolest thing I've seen other than like social media and the internet in my lifetime. And I'm super excited about this. It's funny because in this conversation, I'm picking on data leaders a little bit, which I do at it from time to time, just because I really want to see them be successful, and sometimes they need a good shake.
Yeah.
But what's crazy, and this kind of bothers me about your business, is that your engagements probably have an extra zero or two zeros after them, and you're selling a technical solution. But when you and I talk, you're always like, it's the people and change stuff that matters.
Yeah. That's the hardest
And
part.
getting the customer to buy in on like, hey, let's solidify your operating model before you make an investment in improving your Databricks environment. I'm literally having this conversation right now, and for them, like, I like taking quarters from them is like stealing their children, but they're dropping 8 figures on parallel data warehouses. So your economic buyer as a consultant is also tech focused. They're not business focused, even though they're trying. So like wrap your head around that. Like, how do you coach a customer who's already convinced that it's a solution oriented problem versus
Yeah.
trying to change the enterprise?
100%, right? Everybody the thing is like with change management, enablement, everybody agrees. But, when the CFO or whoever's got the money, right, has to, open up their wallet and really like, oh, we're going to spend all this because this is so important, right? Like people's feelings and skill sets, all this. It is a tough sell.
Yeah.
Versus if you put together an ROI and a proposal, right, around data quality, governance, faster analytics, self-service, that typically gets the dollars, right? Just from a approval perspective. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is kind of interesting.
It's easier to show the ROI. It's like, hey, if you're spending $10 million on Snowflake, you can spend $8 million on Databricks, hypothetically, right? The ROI is crystal clear. It's
technology is the easy part in all this. It's the people that's the hardest, right? The people and the culture and the processes, right? The coding is the easy part. And you know what? It's automated. Like we've seen this it's going to get better, right? Like whether you use people, assistant coding or headless agents going around doing all the coding, that's the easy part. It's the people and the process. That's the hard part.
Well, then how come no one buys political solutions? How come no one buys solutions to those problems? Why? Buy it? What? Help me understand that.
If you had magical agents that could just go and, solve for the org change management people part, right? Like getting approvals for a document across, 20 different faces of, organization, right? Like, yeah, that'd be awesome. I think that's
What's like? I'm curious. Do you have like a horror story in your experience working with people who are either blocking change management initiatives or making it difficult to do the obvious even after the ROI has been established?
yeah. I mean,
Excluding me, I don't count when
yeah.
we're working together.
Boy, lots, right? A lot of times, what happens sometimes in our engagements is we have, changes in leadership, right? So there's new people that show up all the time, and this is common, a human nature, where they come in and they were brought in to make a change in charter, midway through an engagement, right? And then, they have their own charter, right? Like, hey, the old stuff was bad. Like, I'm here, here's my new charter. And so they have a different set of their sort of understanding of where the world needs to get to based on their learnings, right? Their current understanding. And then what we, charted out to build does not align with their objectives, right? So, you start getting into a lot of questions about who approved this, why was this designed this way, why was this built? Lots of sort of, goalpost shifting happens, right? And so we're like, 70, 80% of the way there. So aligning to what the goal is, what the understanding of the problem is, kind of, is important in these engagements. And sometimes it shifts and it's beyond our control, right? Because we have new leaders that came in that had their own agenda, own perspective, not agenda so much, a perspective on what the
No, there's
realities
definitely
are.
an agenda.
Yeah.
You're being nice.
I mean, that
It's
is the reality that, we live in this business, not just us, every consulting company, every engagement, right? It happens even in the software world right now. So
it's crazy because I see a lot of data executives want to go down the fractional CDO route, which I don't think is like a real thing. I think it's just happening because a lot of data executives are out of work. To be honest, like you're still subservient to those politics outside an organization. It's not like as a vendor, you're not participating in that anymore. And in fact, you're probably held hostage to it more and have less influence over the situation because the decision will be made without you in the room. And it's like later,
100%, and I always coach my people, right? Like it's easy. Just the first thing, the two things that get blamed when things go sideways. Number one, the consultant. Number two, the technology, right? It's like, and I've been part of both.
and you're a good guy trying to do the right thing for your customers, like anchor to ROI. I've had examples with customers where they've agreed to take on parts of a project, but they didn't have the skills to do it, and then own that after you're 6 weeks into the project, and then all of a sudden it kills all the trust in the initiative. Right. And I've also had instances where executives have thrown their own teams under the bus to sabotage projects to protect their own turf. And it's unbelievable because a lot of these efficiencies and poorly run processes exist in these organizations because of weak or absent leadership. I think it's nice, and this is me saying, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think it's nice to say like, hey, there's always a revolving door of managers. But, in that transition, the problem rarely changes, but a political operator is going to sit in there and be like, everything the last guy did that no one likes is bad, and therefore everything I'm going to do is good. Resume the project. Let's just call it, Project Vanilla over Project Chocolate. It's wild, and that kind of thrash is really hurting organizations be efficient, capitalize on value from AI. I don't know. Do you agree with that? Or
And yeah, 100%. I think, when we, everyone, right? Like when we enter into this sort of with good intent on like, here's what good looks like, here's what the real problem we're trying to solve, right? This would make an impact. I think everybody has good intentions. Collectively, maybe we didn't do a good job of kind of really, documenting and identifying the root of the problem, right? What we're trying to solve for. And then it just becomes yet another data project, right? Like, hey, we build these pipelines and these dashboards, and then you go to business and like, meh, like,
yeah, who
it's
cares?
nothing different. Like, how does this make my life better, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I think that,
Well,
that part went missing, right? Like collectively.
well, how does AI change any of this, or is it all just another?
I think here's the impact of AI, right? It does not have to be a 6-month, 12-month exercise. You can iterate on this in 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And look, and we have engagements like that. If we don't hit these gates, okay, let's move on. Let's find another project, right? Like you have to hit this quality threshold. What I think executives and business leaders, I think sometimes, fall into the trap of thinking, AI is just magic. You just drop in a solution, right? I think they have to commit to their resources, giving the context. Context is very important for AI, right? It is highly, human in the
The
loop,
semantic
right?
layer.
Yeah, yeah. That's semantic layer. So even for semantic layer, absolutely. For semantic layer to work, right? Business has to be closely involved in sort of feeding, tuning, human in the loop, whatever you mean. Like humans, the contextual context about the business process, the meaning, semantic layer, right? It's all very important to be able to, for AI to hit the mark on the solution or the quality the business needs. Sometimes
But,
that's
I think this is what like racks data leaders' brains is like they're sitting there like, hey, semantic layer, which is the context that is required to make AI work. But then the business is like, no, 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 no.
yeah,
It's funny because like we're falling into that same trap in this conversation where the same kind of fundamentals apply. Where is that balance? Like, how do you get a customer to be like, hey, we have to do this context exercise to
yeah.
make the ROI possible, or is it just hidden in the process?
And
Or
it sometimes it can be hard because I think, business leaders maybe, they're trying to protect their team, right? That there's fear and it's absolutely real, right? First it was just a business, now it's data leaders, right? They're engineering teams. You have to be more efficient with less because agentic coding is real, right? So I think, business leaders sometimes have that fear and maybe don't engage enough as they should. So I think getting their commitment up front, right, in that process of testing out an AI solution. But my point being, like, it doesn't have to be a 6-month exercise, a project anymore. You can iterate on things much faster to figure out, what's real, what's not. And then, hey, did business really not engage and give it the feedback and the context, right? Then let's iterate on that, right? Go to the right level of leadership you need to get their buy-in for the next phase, next iteration of the next project. So I think that loop cycle is much faster and compressed, right? Back to my point.
yeah,
Um,
I'm with you there. I think there's a bad habit in organizations with trying to eat the elephant or solve too big of a problem. Small compounding wins are the way to success. And I love what you're saying about like short little sprints. Like let's do 6 weeks here, 4 weeks here, and let's stop and take what we learn and pivot. And when we first started in the field, when you'd start on any kind of systems or analytics project, you'd basically reverse engineer the schema, build the context layer, build the application schema, and then go implement it. And it's all wrong. And then you need to redo it 2 or 3 times before you either abandon the project or just accept the mediocrity that it delivers. We're in a world today where that cycle used to take years and now it takes weeks to get moving. So
yeah. I mean, just think about, the old sales cycles that we used to run in software, right? Hey, Mr. Customer, we'll have a discovery meeting, more discovery meetings, deeper cycles. We'll come back, 3 or 4 weeks from now. We'll show you a bland solution. And then we have to make the case internally to show you a demo of a custom solution, right? Today, right, Databricks teams are doing this. We can do the same. Within the same meeting, we'll take the discovery notes. We'll show you the art of the possible demo, right? A true business process demo, not just a dashboard. Like here's what a solution could look like. It's like fancy HTML, interactive HTML, but that's a great starting point, right? The business is like, aha, I could just do this in like one interface without having to go to Salesforce and ERP and Workday, right? That's amazing, right? And then you take that, and then from there it moves on to a prototype that we give it to a data engineer that builds this out on top of their data stack in hours, right? So moving from like art of the possible to a demo, and then it's like, hey, can we get to a POC in 4 weeks? Absolutely, right? In the
there you
old
go.
days, the demo cycle alone would take 6 weeks, where the customer is so frustrated. Like you've thrown all these buzzwords, you've talked about all these things. I don't know what the solution looks like, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the MVP, right? We all agree. Here's the ROI of the MVP. Do we build it or not? The end. No? Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's do it. And I think that's going to be so cool. Like I'm seeing like startups, like startups in the sense of startups, but like entrepreneurs, especially early stage entrepreneurs, just Google business sites and looking at their websites to see if they're dated. And their whole sales process is, hey, here's a brand new website. It's free. Just have it. If you want more, let's talk. And it's pretty cool how much value you can deliver up front and then get into the meatier problem. And that early identification of value also gets alignment early, which helps address some of the political challenges. And to your point on leadership churn and transition, the faster you get stuff done and embedded in an organization, the less likely you fall hostage to, organic organizational change that's outside your control.
100%, 100%. Yep. I think
I love
adoption
it.
sort of, being, I think it's also like reskilling, upskilling, right? Helping your true stakeholders and users. And I think for the most part, everybody that we talk to and customers, right? Like whether they're data savvy or not, I think most people get it. AI is coming. It's here. We need to adapt and we need to change. And these new tools are critical for us to be successful. Yeah.
I love it. Well, tell me this. I'm curious about Sunny Data and kind of what it's like building it because we met, I think, 3 years ago for coffee or something like that, and you were just getting started. But since then, your business has experienced remarkable growth. Why?
I mean, I'd like to say, I think it's all me, but it's like timing is everything,
It's
right?
all you.
Yeah, it's all timing is everything, right? Number one, I think I wish we'd started the business sooner. We hitched ourselves the right wagon, right? In this case, the Databricks platform, right? We're pure play, focused on one thing. It's that the market for AI, right, is hot in terms of everybody needs it. It's here, it's upon us, and I think what's happening at a macro level, right? The large SIs are all getting disrupted at the top layer, bottom layer, right? So I think timing is great. Customers looking for nimble boutique partners. So there's tremendous demand that we're
100%.
fulfilling. And so I think also, I found the right group of founding partners that, each person brings the right skill sets and a competency. And then the chemistry was very important. So, and then we have an amazing, team of board members, right? That have given us a playbook that we're executing on a quarterly basis that guides us. So the growth has been phenomenal. Really, really thankful to a lot of past customers that have trusted me, us, right? Relationships. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. Take care of your customers, come through on your commitments, do the best you can, and also your employees and consultants, right? You got to hire the first set of cohort of technical leaders that people can rally around, right? From a recruiting perspective, that's very important. You have the sales pipeline, you have the talent pipeline, right? So yeah, that has allowed us to grow rapidly in the 2.5 years. We're closing in on 200 employees, and we have delivery centers. And we started out Uruguay, we have Argentina, Mexico City now, and also we just started Nepal about 6 months ago. We're up to 10 consultants there.
Yeah. So let me just run that back.
Yeah,
200 employees globally. Started the business, what, 3 years ago?
2.5.
2.5 years ago. Okay. Like that's incredible. And one thing I want to highlight here, and it's funny, is it not funny, it's amazing, is I work with a lot of people like yourself. Like I've talked to a lot of different entrepreneurs, and a lot of them have been like, hey, Taylor can do it, so I can do it. I feel like that that's kind of been the catalyst. But what's wild is I've seen people like yourself and other friends who have literally gone from being high performers within organizations, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, to building multi-million-dollar businesses in a matter of 5, 10 years. And it's wild to see the success. And I think that people are so scared to leave that like
I know.
corporate security, and it's not everyone says it's not really security, but it's really hard to make that decision, and it's nice seeing other people who've done it and been successful like yourself. Tell me, if someone else out there right now is facing a similar jump, or is, in the first 90 days of their journey and it's seeming bleak,
Yeah, yeah.
what kind of words of wisdom would you give that person?
No, I would say, look, you got to find the right partners to start this journey with, right? In the first 6 months, it is going to be a slog. It is going to be difficult, dark days, right? Am I going to be able to meet payroll, right? So, the founding capital is important. Whatever model you're doing, is a solopreneur, right? Is it you're taking some investment money? But really, I think you focus on the core thing that really differentiates you, right? For us, we had a story to tell because we were nobody. Databricks has thousands of partners that are much bigger, right? Why would they trust me or my story to break into this market, right? You have to tell a differentiating story, and then really focus maniacally into getting the first one or two customers, making them successful and building upon that, right? I think, and then you have to in the background constantly thinking about scale. How do we scale this out? Whatever your growth plans are, we had pretty aggressive growth plans, so thinking about scale from all functions of the business is really important, and also complementary skills, right? Like I'm lucky, been very very fortunate to have been an engineer, in pre-sales, right? And then sales. And then you have to have, if you're the technologist who is going to sell for you, right? I think sometimes, a lot of technologists make the mistake of like, selling is easy. I built this solution. I'm going to go pitch, right? Like it's not, right? Sales is really, really, really hard unless you've done it or you've got somebody that's done it. So I think a lot sometimes technologies just don't have the appreciation for how difficult it is to sell and sell as a nobody, right? Like you're starting from ground zero as a startup. That is really, really hard. So it can be hard, but I would say, stay true to your gut, right? To what your core offering differentiator is, and constantly, ask people for advice, right? Like I would come talk to you, I would come talk to other, mentors and friends in the industry. Hey, would you listen to my pitch? Help me, like seek feedback, like, like all day, every day, right? Seek to get better. Yeah.
I love it. And tell me this, is as your company has grown, right? And through this rapid growth, how important is data to your day-to-day decision making?
Yeah.
And what kind of principles have you let go to remain nimble, customer oriented, and problem focused?
Yeah. All right. This is so important, right? As we've grown, like today, close to 200 employees, we already have 25 SaaS systems, Taylor. I just did the math, right? Like I was just looking at the bills and like, from all the companies, it adds up. The complexity increases because we're putting in functions and processes for, 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, right? For that growth. As you do that, and then you'll get into these meetings, you'll have functions, as you're rapidly growing, new people come in. We'll talk about, where the business is headed, what decisions need to be made. And people throw like anecdotal evidence, like this happened, right? And I think you've got to be able to cut through that noise and really encourage everyone, the discipline of looking at the data that we have today and making decisions, right? And so it's funny, like we have our own enterprise metrics project today, like to bring in all numbers, right? Typical numbers, utilization, per head revenue, bench time, all these things. And even for a company that does this for our customers for a living, it's right. You just have to get past that. Is it like 99% accurate, right? Like, is it? And so we ground ourselves in using data to make decisions. Like, we always start out meetings with like, okay, what does the data tell us, right? Actual versus plan, right? And then what do we need to course correct, or what do we need to do for the next 3 to 6 months? So you have to constantly, like every meeting has to be led with, let us look at the data, make decisions, make on data, because it's so easy to fall into the trap of like, oh, this thing happened last week, right? It's like, is that like an anecdotal evidence of something that happened, right? So I think that's really important.
I love it. And you've done so much in your career so far, and it seems like you're on a rocket ship just off to, an incredible potential journey. And I'm really excited for you. Tell me, kind of paying it forward to the people who are listening, what's one lesson about whether it's entrepreneurship, leadership, data that you wish you had known or applied earlier in your career? Because, like you said, you wish you had started your business earlier than you did, and who knows where you'd be then. But what's that one thing that you kind of think about that would benefit other people in your position?
Yeah, I think trust is everything, right? Trust with your employees, be who you are, like your genuineness, your passion for the technology and what you do speaks through, right? Like I had this, I was doing this preparation for a pitch to a large Databricks sales team, talking about this solution, that solution. And somebody stopped me and said, be passionate. Kai, you are passionate about what you do. You know your stuff. You've been there. You've done these. You've seen all these technologies. You build these data warehouses. Like passionate comes out. Like your passion comes through. So, be genuine. Build trust. And no matter, these technologies come and go, right? Yes, AI is the new frontier. It's going to change all our lives. It has. But I think at the end of the day, people still want to do business with people, and work with that they trust, that they like. So I think being genuine, and then, let your passion speak for the work that you do.
I love it. And tell me that, I mean, for people who want to get in touch with you personally to learn more about your journey, or who want to, enhance their Databricks environment, what's a good reason to reach out to you? What's a great way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's very simple. Our website is sunnydata.ai. We should probably buy the .com domain too. We haven't. And then my email is kai@sunnydata.ai. We have our sales contact information on the website as well. I'm on LinkedIn. If not, Taylor has my cell phone number. He can share at his discretion.
I love it. And it will be at my discretion. Kai, thank you so much. Your journey is incredible. I admire what you've accomplished, and I'm really excited to see where you're at in 4 years. And hopefully you still return my phone calls by then.
Anytime, man. Anytime. No, this was really fun, Taylor. Thank you so much for having me. It's exciting. It was fun to chat and just talk about all things business, data, and tech, right? So awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure, brother. Take it easy.
All right, thank you.
That's it for this episode of One Version of the Truth. If you're interested in how leaders turn data into real outcomes, you can follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm Taylor Culver. Thanks again for listening.